It's April 30th, 2014, and this is Arizona Mining Review. I'm your host, Lee Allison, here at the Arizona Geological Survey in Tucson. Our first guest, as usual, is Nyal Niemuth, who heads up the Economic Geology section for the survey based in Phoenix. So, Nyal, good morning and welcome back to AMR.
Always good to be here. Thanks, Lee.
All right. Um, there's a lot of activity going on around the state in mining. You want to give us your sense of what's going on and what's behind this?
I don't know if there's a lot of activity going on, but maybe we should say there's a great increase in activity going on compared to what we've been seeing lately. So it certainly seems like a lot of activity. Um, as usual, I don't get out in the field to visit a lot of these properties. I hope the audience is appreciative of the fact that I do a lot of this remotely. And that brings us back to one of the things we were looking at last session when we talked about some of the copper production. Had a little more time to read through some of the annual reports and Form 10Ks. And I think it's worth noting, especially in light of one of our later guests today, just how significant and what the status is of the Morenci expansion.
Okay. Well, the Morenci is the biggest copper mine in Arizona. It's probably the biggest copper mine in the U.S. and one of the top two or three worldwide. And Ralph Stegen from Freeport-McMoRan will be here later in the show to give us some of the history and oversights. But what have you run into that really caught your attention?
I knew some of this, but we don't think about it often enough. Morenci is so significant; it's our flagship operation, and like I say, it's in that top 10 list of the world's largest copper mines. Very significant to our mining industry and our economy. They've been for a couple of years working on a mill expansion, and in metric tons, that mill expansion is basically going to take the operation from about 50,000 tons per day to 115,000 tons per day. And what that means in terms of copper recovery is we're going to see the mine's production go to more than, or likely going to go to more than 1 billion tons. And that's going to be, over half the state's production until we see, or when we should say, we see Rosemont come online.
Okay. That's significant. That's dramatic. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Ralph a little bit more about their plans and what's driving this.
And the really good news is we're expected to see that mill start to come online in the first half of 2014. Given that it's late April, I don't know if they're firing that up yet, but if not, they'll be doing that pretty quickly.
Wow. So we're talking the next couple of months, perhaps.
Yes, and then we expect to see that hit full stride in 2015.
Well, that's certainly one of the biggest impacts on copper and mining in general in Arizona. What else is on your list?
Maybe just for those that attended the Geological Society field trip, or maybe for those that didn't, it might be worth noting also from that same Freeport Form 10K report that for the first time that I can recall in a long time from them or from Phelps Dodge, they reported for the Christmas mine that we visited on Saturday, 225 million tons of mineralized material at a sulfide content of about 0.38% copper.
Do you want to remind people where the Christmas mine is?
Yeah, Christmas mine would be located just to the east, maybe a little bit northeast of Winkleman. So that's down by the northeast of the Asarco smelting operations at Hayden.
Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, that was a good point to make because sometimes we assume our audience is all Arizona familiar, and that's probably not the case.
And even people who are familiar with Arizona may not know where all of the mines are right now.
We've seen some money break loose. Some of the deals have been made. I know a lot of people during the winter months have been off to Canada, have been off to China and other places diligently pursuing funds. We're starting to see announcements that some of those fundraising efforts have been successful. Perhaps more importantly, we're starting to see that some of those funds are actually arriving, and so people are able to restart some of their drilling and other studies.
Do you have a couple of examples that you can give us?
Well, maybe to look at one recent acquisition. We've seen the Capstone folks come down and pick up Pinto Valley. Their operation is perhaps more noteworthy because it's in production. They announced that they had a pre-feasibility study completed that can potentially add 8 years of mine life, stretching that out to 2026. They're going to see that mineralized resource there grow to about 1.5 billion tons. That's a 61% increase. That 12-year extension in life, 8 years extension in life, is still constrained in the total length by, the good news is not by the mineralization, but by the existing tailing facilities and permitted dump and land for the permitted dumps. So that's really good news as well.
Okay, so you're saying the the reserve is greater than the space they have right now to put all of the waste rock and the tailings. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, we don't want to use the word reserve. This is still, pre-feasibility and these are resources. But just in terms, they've been able to, look at the operating parameters and see that there's plenty of mineralization that, with things going well, could be economic and really would make that deposit and the life of that mine much longer.
Okay, so one of the key things we ought to be looking for is them taking some actions to expand their space for the tailings and waste rock.
Yeah, and that's the good news, knowing that we know it takes a long time to get these permits sometimes, go through all the public hearing process and so forth. They've got encouragement from that resource to go to work on that.
Well, I know one of the things I've heard something about, and I'm probably jumping the gun here on you, but Wildcat Silver had some big news here just in the past few weeks.
Yeah, and again, that's some activity that are come to fruition hopefully farther out. But they made an announcement that they signed a letter agreement to acquire a significant interest in Regal Resources' Sunnyside project. The Sunnyside project is also located in Santa Cruz County down in the Patagonia Mountains, adjacent to their ongoing work at the Hermosa project. And what I think is really significant is they're looking at not just as the recognized deep sulfide mineralization, but also looking at some shallower copper oxide, a supergene chalcocite blanket, and a skarn. And so in total, that could become a very large addition to their resource down there. Obviously, lots of work and drilling will be required before we can confirm that. But the property has had some historic, pretty high-grade drill holes in that skarn, over 1% copper, a fair amount of lead and zinc in some areas, as well as contributing to what they already have at Hermosa, some quite high-grade silver intercepts.
Well, if I remember right, the company Wildcat Silver had said that in the last year or so that if they were in production today, they'd be one of the I think 5 largest silver mines in the U.S. With this near-surface oxide that you're talking about. Do you have any sense of what that means for the overall size of this prospect?
I know that from some work that Fred Graybill of Asarco released many years ago, that the deep sulfide was categorized as greater than 200 million tons at 0.6%. Regal had released a couple of years ago a 43 NI 43101 report that reviewed some of the mineralization, but they really never felt they had enough data together to lump out some resource figures for the higher level skarn or oxide mineralization. So that's why this greatly could add to the potential, but it's still a what if. We'll have to get busy and see them do some work drilling.
Right, and I understand Wildcat's trying to get some permits for doing some additional exploration drilling now. So that's one of the projects we'll keep an eye on here in the coming months and years.
Back to the Globe Miami district, one of the things we talked about maybe 6 months ago on the mining review was the acquisition by Copper Fox Metals of the Van Dyke, which is a oxide deposit that has potential for in situ leaching. They announced this month that they're going to commence drilling to reaffirm some of that historic resource, as well as that they've picked some contractors who will help do metallurgical studies required to do some of their preliminary economic assessment.
That's a significant step forward. Has there been concerns about the metallurgy of that? I know. Well, let me just back up and say I didn't realize that had been a concern up to this point.
No, I don't think it's a concern. It's one of the inputs in having the qualified parties on board that's required as part of the Canadian requirements for the securities NI 43101 reports.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that. Niall, I think we're getting short on time here. Is there any last issues or topics that
Well, I'll just throw out two more, and we'll hope we'll have good news to talk more detailed in time to talk about them later. Oracle Ridge has been quiet right there in the Catalinas next to Tucson for some time. They've just announced they're going to do a 35,000-foot infill drilling program, and then to get out of the copper belt and the copper triangle, we'll jump up into Yavapai County, and we've seen a company called Silverstream make an announcement to make an initial investment into the Zonia oxide copper leach project. So we'll see where that goes.
All right, well, we'll look forward to hearing more about those in coming episodes. Once again, Niall, thanks. It's always exciting to hear all the activity going on, and we'll talk to you next month.
Glad we had a lot to report.
Okay, good deal. Well, joining us now is Ralph Stegen, who is Vice President for Mine Site Exploration with Freeport-McMoRan Copper and Gold. Ralph, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Liam.
You've been around a long time, so what's your experience? We're going to talk about Morenci Mine. So what's been your experience, one with Freeport and at Morenci?
I started in Morenci in January of 1991 and worked there until 94, and from there I went to Tyrone and returned as chief geologist in Morenci. So collectively, I worked in that district for about 7 to 8 years.
Okay. But now you covered not just Morenci, but you've got other operations in Arizona and worldwide, I understand.
Right. So after that position, I was promoted to the one I have now, and I'm responsible for mine site exploration in the operations we have in North and South America and the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Wow. Most of the world.
Most of it, exclusive of our Grasberg operation.
In Indonesia.
Right.
Right, okay. Well, I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk about Morenci, and that's been an amazing mine in so many ways. It's one of the world's biggest mines, copper mines, and it's also been a leader in mining technology and processing recovery. And can you give us some of your insights on how Morenci has kind of changed the world of copper mining?
Well, I mean, I understand the original prospectors entered the area in 1865.
Okay.
Production really commenced in 1872. There were 3 or 4 major mining companies at the time that were active in the district. And it was then consolidated in 1921 by Phelps Dodge.
Okay.
And they continued to operate virtually continuously until Freeport acquired them in 2007.
Okay.
So the early part of the history was mining of very high grade, oxidized, and native ores from what was the old town site of Morenci. Some of the grades that they produced were in excess of 20%.
Wow.
Consisted of essentially massive malachite, native copper, and cuprite in Paleozoic bodies that were oxidized from skarn.
Okay.
And then the camp transitioned to more mining of chalcocite ores, mostly underground in the form of veins and strongly enriched masses in what was then the upper parts of the Morenci pit.
When did the mine switch from being an underground mine to an open pit mine?
The mining essentially finished in 1932, and the records are incomplete, but it's estimated that around 40 to 43 million tons were mined at an average grade of about 3.4%.
Wow.
So there was a bit of a lull, in which case there was some exploration that had commenced in the later part of the 1800s through 2 different firms in what was then to become the clay ore body. And this was a mass of chalcocite situated in the Morenci pit that was mined underground, and then when that was exhausted, there was a lot of drilling, evaluation, and looking at the ore body. And one of the preeminent people that pushed that, his name was Lewis Cates. He had experience at Bingham with the open pit there, so he was hired by Phelps Dodge and was instrumental in evaluating that deposit for open pit mining. They worked on that. There were some low metal prices and struggling through some engineering, but in 1937 they commenced stripping, and first production in 1939, and it's been going virtually ever since.
Okay.
So open pit, processed by a concentrator. So The ores were amenable to concentrating up until the 1980s or so, and it was recognized that there were deposits that were amenable to leaching.
Okay.
And so SXEW technology was incorporated. It was first started by Phelps Dodge in Tyrone, and then was brought over to Morenci with the mining and leaching of the Northwest Extension ore body, which is just north of the Morenci pit. And so that technology through leaching and concentrating has advanced to where it is now, and both are significant mainstays to the operation.
Okay.
And so one of the more recent developments was in looking at chalcocite ores that could be processed by crushing. So prior to that, all of the processing was what we call run of mine, or just the fragment that is produced from blasting into the pit and then leached. And so that has been an active part of the production since about 2000, 2001. So right now, Morenci's processing streams are a mill that we're expanding. We have crush leach, and we also do run of mine. So pretty exciting in terms of the opportunities that the companies have taken advantage of the mineralogy and the geology, the deposit to operate and process the mineralization there.
And so my understanding is not only have you're doing record production, but the investments you're making now are going to increase production over the next several years or longer?
We're in the process of finishing construction of a mill that will increase the mill production from about 75,000 tons per day to roughly about 125,000 tons per day. So an expansion of the opportunities, and with that, exploration has been active, so we've been able to delineate the ore bodies and provide the opportunity that the mining company can take advantage of.
So can you give us an idea what the life of the mine may be still out ahead of us?
Well, currently the reserves are about 14 billion pounds of recovered copper. I believe that's around 18 to 19 years.
Okay.
But through exploration, mine planning, operational efforts, those continue to grow. So in my opinion, and looking at the exploration results and what we say, the future's bright, but those plans are still being worked on.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of uncertainties there, but I know from my experience in Utah with the Bingham Canyon pit, every time they said we have X number of years out here, they would pass that and find that they had even more number of years at that point than they'd ever thought before. And
Well, and the way I look at this, I'm a geologist, but to make it a reserve, a lot of things have to go into place. You have to have good mine plans. You have to have a cost profile that allows you to mine at certain copper prices. So it takes really a collective effort of everybody to make a mine a successful operation.
I think you've really made that case. Is there something unique about Morenci, or is it just one of the best of the kind of ore bodies out there?
Well, it's been known for its supergene mineralization, and that was the mainstay and still is of the operation.
Okay.
And it's been so through what we see now. But our work with drilling, with the geological evaluation and analysis, clearly the future is going to be chalcopyrite and molybdenite. So the future, in my view, is still going to be leach related, but a greater proportion of milling type ores. The other thing, it's a very large deposit, and it's interesting to me to think we've been mining the deposits since the 1870s, but we still don't understand what the true potential is.
I didn't want to ask that question, so I'm glad to hear that, because it's always baffling to me that as much as we know about these bodies, how much we don't know yet. So in your role as the mine exploration manager, what kind of techniques are you using to try to figure this out?
Well, we have a lot of drilling that we base our evaluations on, but the thing that's been fortunate with Freeport is that they've supported deeper drilling, more extensive drilling than other firms did, and that's allowed us to drill deeper to test some targets that we knew were there, but really never had the opportunity to take advantage of. And with drilling technologies, how deep we can drill, all of those have allowed us the opportunity to drill, but it doesn't go without good geological work, good good logging of core, good looking at alteration patterns, thinking about rock types. All these sort of things are fundamental things that one has to look at when we're doing a drilling program to add more reserves and to determine the potential.
Wow. So, any last thoughts about Morenci, Freeport, the future of copper in Arizona?
I'm optimistic. I look at not only what the potential at Freeport is, but the other sites that Freeport has, and I think the future is bright. They're wonderful deposits. It's a great state to work in, and I can't think but it's going to go up and up and up.
Wow.
So,
Okay, great. Ralph, thanks so much for joining us today, and best of luck with all these new plans out at Morenci.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Okay, well, joining us next, live from Phoenix on Skype, is Casey Brown, who's the digital librarian here at the Arizona Geological Survey. And Casey's been working to digitize the vast quantity of paper records that we acquired through the merger of the Arizona Department of Mines and Mineral Resources with the Arizona Geological Survey. So, Casey, tell me the scope and scale and purpose of the project you're involved with.
Well, the scale of the project is that we acquired about 30 collections from the Department of Mines and Mineral Resources. Most of that is of consulting geologists or companies, as either those geologists would retire or the companies went under, and we would receive their files. One of the major collections was from the Department of Mines and Minerals Resources engineers themselves. So whether they went out for field visits or they received data from the mine owners or their consultants, they built up their own inventories of property files so that when future companies or geologists wanted to inquire about a specific site, they had something to provide them. We've been working on inventorying and have inventoried the vast majority of those files. We've been focused on cataloging specifically the locations, the contents of the Arizona properties, so that we can bring those to people through our new digital portal. Those files that we do have scanned, we've begun to release those online now.
Okay, and my understanding is that you've got enough material that's digital and online that it's really of great value to the industry or anyone else who wants to look at these historical records. So tell us about the new mine data portal that you've set up and what it does and how people can use it.
The mine data portal really is a front-end interface built to so that our customers can search the USGen data. The USGen really operates as a back-end system to catalog all of our files, but mine data provides them with an interface where they can find the files more easily. It really answers a few of the key use cases that we find. Either somebody knows the name of a mine that they're looking for. I'm looking for the Tip Top mine. They can go in here and on the search panel search for Tip Top, or I don't know the name of the mine, but I could show you on a map. They can go and do a search by the map by dragging a marker, and you can set your proximity. One way or the other, you can find that property file now, and you can download that as a PDF and see just what those records are, just like you would come down to our office and find those. Lastly, because the photos may not be of primary interest to our exploration geologists, but by their nature, we decided to create a photo gallery to easily browse those in case those were desired or needed.
Okay, and for those of our viewers who may not be familiar with it, you said USGen. That's the US Geoscience Information Network. that we have been building and managing here in the Arizona Survey that's part of a national data network in the geosciences. So everything we're building here with our mineral data or mining data is linked into a national system, and we'll be integrating those down the road so you can discover not only the mining data but other types of geoscience data or oil and gas data, things like that, and be able to link them all together. So how many thousands of documents, maps, and photos are online right now that people can search?
Well, we prioritized the so-called ADMR collection is the one that was created by the engineers and aggregated by the engineers from the department. It was the most requested and used collection that they had. That is about, I think it's 4,400 property files. A word of caution, I guess, to anyone that's using it is if you're doing a search on the site and you did a search on the map, if you're not finding anything, means we don't have a report on it. So there are about 10,000 mineral occurrences that we track throughout the state. If we don't have a record for that, or we don't have a report, it's not on the site. We may know that there was once a claim out there or something occurred, but you wouldn't find that there.
Okay. Now you've got a lot more material that's being digitized right now by commercial vendors. When will we be getting back those new digital scans, and when will you be able to get them online and available for the public to view?
We've sent out about, I think it's half a dozen of the other collections. We will be receiving those over the next coming months. Over the next 6 months, we'll start to get those in, and we can start to provide those in PDF format, just like the ADMR photo, the files that are on the site now. I believe we'll have to go back and do a little bit of redesign on it to allow people to find multiple files on a single location. But as soon as we have that worked out, these should start rolling out over the next several months, and will soon double the amount of content that's on the website.
Okay, doubling it. All right. Well, my understanding is that the Mine Portal site up right now is still in a test mode, and that you've asked people to take a look, try it out, and let you know what they think about it, any changes or improvements they'd like to see. So we'll make sure that we put the link up on the screen here, and contact information so people who are using it can come back and give us feedback on what we can do to make it of more use to them. So Casey, I want to thank you for joining us. Congratulations on getting all of that data up and online and made available, and we'll look forward to seeing the rest of it coming forward over the next several months.
Pleasure talking to you.
All right, thanks Casey. Thanks for joining us here today on Arizona Mining Review. Our producer-director is Mike Conway, technical support from Ron Palmer, logo and set design from Stephanie Marr, and our editor is Jordan Maddy. We look forward to seeing you next month on the Arizona Mining Review.